Mr. Laura, the full committee ranking member, I don't know what your time constraints are. Do we go, I want to, you're okay to go back and forth, or do, because I can recognize you now if you'd like.
Do you want to have something? Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, I just want to make sure that, I know that your time is, I know that you've got a lot of other subcommittees that you like to attend. All right. To the Vice Chairman of the subcommittee, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To both of you, thanks for being with us this morning. One of the allegations that I've heard over the PEPFAR program is that taxpayer dollars had been somehow used to fund abortions. And I can't help but think, how can this committee appropriate funds for such a worthy cause, it appears, and yet those funds be so egregiously misused? How does that happen, and how does this committee ensure that with any other decision that we make, the funds are actually used for the sole purpose that they're intended?
Mr. Vice Chairman, you raise a hugely important question, and let me just say from the outset, and I think anyone implementing would agree, it is completely unacceptable when the U.S. law is violated in any way, but in particular on the Helms Amendment, because that's such an important part and has been a benchmark of foreign development, and particularly HIV programs. There was in Mozambique, as the ranking member mentioned, a group of nurses that were not trained in the Helms Amendment and were active in abortion care. Their salary was paid for by PEPFAR, which you could say then funded the abortion, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I think we're getting into details. It never should have happened.
Excuse me, with all due respect, we need to get into the details here. We need to understand how the United States sends money someplace else and then it gets used for a purpose totally different than what it was intended. I'm okay to hear the details.
Yeah. So as I understand the details, nurse funding went to the government for nurses to provide care, including HIV care, but they do other things as well, and that's an important piece of what happens is what PEPFAR has done is funded a health system which allows for pandemic response and many other things. So those nurses were being funded in order to provide HIV care, but then they also performed abortions. And that is unacceptable because no one funded by the U.S. government should engage in those types of activity. And as was mentioned by the ranking member, they had not been trained in the Helms Amendment and weren't aware of it. And so now, and these have to be put in place, and this is a problem with cutting money too quickly. It's difficult to have oversight then, especially if you don't have the systems to do it, is training of everyone who receives any money from the U.S. government in the Helms Amendment and in the U.S. government policies and practices so that they understand what they are, that they actually sign and attest to that they are aware of those policies and practices, and that very importantly, that there be reviews, systematic reviews, and as the ranking member mentioned, this did happen, but it didn't happen until after, that there be regular reviews and everyone be aware that those reviews are happening to deter any action against the law.
That is helpful. One of the key screens for this committee now is to make sure any funds that we spend abroad are in the best interest of our national security. Can you tell me how funds for PEPFAR and preventing AIDS abroad is in the United States national security interests?
Perhaps I can speak to that as a former ambassador and level of Assistant Secretary of State. I can tell you, let me give you an example. When I first went to Namibia, I met with the president. This was early in the days of PEPFAR. And the president said to me, you know, we hate the United States because you were on the wrong side of apartheid. But now we love the United States because you're the only one here supporting us in something that's going to destroy our country. So the soft power the ranking member mentioned is hugely important Because the United States actually, if you go back, it's hard to do a negative. But what we expected to happen, what the US intelligence community expected to happen, was literally Africa falling apart, because there were countries where more than a third of the adult population was infected. There was a district in Botswana I visited, 75% of pregnant women were infected with HIV. They were all going to die, their kids were all going to die. There were entire villages run by orphans. The African continent could not put a peacekeeping force together because their soldiers were all infected with HIV. And because HIV hits people in their reproductive age and productive age, it was factory workers and machine workers. Ford Motor Company in South Africa was among the first providing antiretroviral therapy because it was going to destroy their ability to produce cars. So on a diplomatic front, on a stability front, and on a soft power front, it is in our interest. The other way it's in our interest, and this has been shown, is Africa is the fastest growing. By the 2030s, Africa will have more people than India or China. And it is a young population. It is also among the fastest growing economies in the world. And it is the economy of the future. Virtually everyone predicts that. The CEO of Walmart told me that. Africa is our trading partner for the future. It's where we will make money, where our companies can make money and invest. There's a company sitting right behind us that produces new technologies that could end the AIDS epidemic. So on a diplomatic dividend front, on a future economic growth and development front, and economic opportunity, and on a national security front, both on the diplomatic and economic and stability side, this is in our national interest, which is why we did it. The first time the UN Security Council held a meeting on an infectious disease was HIV, for all the reasons I mentioned. What was averted, a negative's hard to measure. This is in our national security. I can also be very clear, because I spend a lot of time in Africa, we are losing ground rapidly because of recent events and because of the fact that China and Russia are all over Africa right now, all over Africa. And we have lost our status as the #1 trading partner in Africa. And there are a lot of resources and minerals and that future economic opportunity. And if we cede that field to our adversaries, it will not be a pretty picture, because it's a big part of the world.